So we want to talk about ratios and proportions. So let's start with ratios. By definition, ratios are about us comparing two things. A lot of times when we see a ratio, we usually compare it by using a fraction, say one thing over something else. Or we could use the colons, one thing compared to something else. Or sometimes we'll use the word to. So we'll say one thing again compared to something else. So it could be written in one of those three forms. But a lot of times when we see ratios, especially on tests, we overlook them because we just want to set it up and solve. No, read the problem so you make sure you're doing what the ratio asks, and then don't solve it, but reduce it. So let's look at them so you'll understand what I'm saying. Here's our first question, or here's our scenario, shall I say. On a quiz, Mark answered 16 questions right and 4 questions wrong. So that's the information that we are given. So we want to set up some ratios based on that particular scenario. So here's our first one. It says, what is the ratio of right to wrong answers? So again, what is our ratio asking us to compare? We're comparing the right answers to the wrong answers. So according to our information, he has 16 right answers. So that's going to be on the top of our fraction bar. And then that's compared to what he got wrong, which was 4 answers were wrong. So again, when we have a ratio, we can reduce it, but we don't change it into a whole number. So I can reduce 16 over 4 because 4 will divide into both of them evenly. So 16 divided by 4, of course, leaves me with 4. And 4 divided by 4 leaves me with 1. So this is our final answer. We do not turn ratios into whole numbers because remember, we're comparing two things. So we have to make sure there's comparison being shown. Let's try another one. What about if we wanted to know what is the ratio of right answers to total answers? Now look at how we changed our ratio. This time we're focusing on what's right to the total number. So again, I want to look at what's right, and according to our scenario, there were 16 right. So 16 still stays on the top. But it doesn't say to wrong this time. It says to total. Well, how do I get the total? Well, if I got 16 right and 4 wrong, then my total by adding 16 plus 4 together would give me a total of 20 questions on the test. Again, I can reduce this because both of those can be reduced by 4. So my final answer would be 4 out of 5. So 4 to 5 answers. One more. It says, what is the ratio of wrong answers to right answers? Again, what does my ratio want me to show first? What is wrong versus what is right. So according to this, my wrong answers was 4 answers were wrong. So 4 is on top this time compared to 16 answers that were right. So 16 goes down here. Again, I can reduce this, which is I do reduce. I just don't turn them into whole numbers. So this ends up being 1 over 4. So again, there is my ratio. Now again, these ratios can be written as fractions, or the exact same ratio could be written this way. And that's still a ratio. This ratio, even though it looks like a fraction, could be written 4 to 5 because it's still meaning the same thing. Because again, we said originally 3 ways that you can write a ratio. So again, as long as you focus on how the question is being asked, you should be okay with the ratios. Now, if we can understand a ratio, then we should be able to understand a proportion. And proportions are about comparing 2 ratios together. So let's look at this problem. A recipe that serves 8 people calls for 2 cups of milk. How many cups of milk will be needed for 36 servings? So first off, when I look at proportions, I always think about what is being compared. Just like with my ratios, I need to focus on how or what they deem as important. Well, to me, it looks like they're comparing the servings to the cups of milk. So I'm serving 8 people. I have 2 cups of milk. So to me, I'm comparing my serving sorry about that, servings to my cups of milk. And you don't have to write all that. You can say servings to milk or cups to milk or whatever. But just to make sure you understand what's being compared. Now, once I know what's being compared, I go back in the problem and look at how they compare it. So first they say serves 8 people with 2 cups of milk. So 8 people get served with 2 cups of milk compared to, because remember, proportions are 2 ratios being compared. Compared to, okay, my next set of information doesn't tell me how many cups of milk, but however many cups of milk that will be, I know I'm going to get 36 servings out of that. So that would mean my 36 goes here because I know how many servings. I will put an X here because I don't know how many people. To solve a proportion, we always know cross multiply and divide. So I'm going to cross multiply 2 times 36. So I'm doing 2 times 36. And of course, that's going to give me 72. And then I'm going to divide by what's left out. And of course, that was the 8. So 72 divided by 8. I end up with 9 being my final answer. So then I would get 9 cups of milk for 36 servings. So we got another one. It says the ratio of full-time to part-time employees is 5:3. If there are 48 part-time employees, how many full-time employees are there? So again, what am I looking at here? What is being compared? Looks like I'm comparing full-time to part-time employees. So that looks like what's being compared here. So I'm comparing full to part. And again, you don't have to, I write this part because it helps me keep things straight. Now, I do think you should write some kind of notation on the side so you know how you're comparing things. That's why I did full to part. And then I'll go back in my problem. Okay, so let me see. According to this, here's my ratio for full to time. And remember we said we don't always have to use division signs, fraction bars, or the word 2. We can use that symbol to also mean that we're looking at a ratio. So that means 5 of these people are full-time, 3 of these people are part-time. So I'm going to write that 5 to 3 compared to 48 people are part-time, and I don't know how many full-time I have. So compared to 48 of these people are part-time, so that's going to go down here. And that's one of the reasons why I write this on the side, because normally when we get numbers, we just want to write them anywhere and just we think we're right. But when I write full, that means any number that represents full had to go on the top. When I put part, any number that represents part had to go on the bottom. Part-time employees, full-time employees. So the 48 went on the bottom because that was a part-time number. So I would put X on the top. And again, cross multiply and divide. So I'm going to multiply 5 and 48. So 5 times 48 is going to give me 240. And then I'm going to divide by what's left out, which was 3. So 240 divided by 3. Ooh, that looks really ugly, but you guys, that's a 3. Sorry about that. And my final answer then would end up being 80. So I have 80 full-time employees. So again, ratios and proportions about some kind of comparison going on. Ratios, we're only comparing 2 main things and we look at what needs to be compared. Proportions are when we have a set of ratios. So there's 2 sets of information being compared. Okay, hope that helps.